After decades of matching and often overcoming the heretic naval menace with the might of the royal fleet, the Crown of England now finds most of its battles are fought on its own land. Ever since the disastrous naval battle of the Bloody Cliffs in 1805, England has been a country at war. Betrayed by the Prince of Wales, who switched sides in the middle of the battle, the remnants of the English fleet were only salvaged thanks to Admiral Nelson's rearguard action and the heroic sacrifice of the HMS Bellerophon. The remnants of the fleet limped into Portsmouth to fight another day. Mercifully, so great was the toll exacted by Nelson's defiant last stand that a full-scale invasion of Britain was averted, for the legendary Admiral took the Great Red Dragon, flagship of the heretic fleet, to the bottom of the sea with him. The years that followed were hard. Overseas territories were lost, and vital trade with mainland Europa became a struggle. Heretic raiding parties sowed chaos and destruction along the Albion coastline, striking deep into the countryside, pillaging and burning towns and cities before being intercepted by the overstretched forces of the Crown. King Robert the Longsword reformed the army to counter this threat, and laid plans for the building of a secret weapon to safeguard the realm. Thus, the fate of England rested on Project Invincible, the construction of the moving fortress of Britannia. Completed in 1907 AD, the construction of the moving fortress of Britannia and its deployment in the Great War finally stabilized the situation on English soil. Capable of matching and defeating the heretic forces, the fortress moved under its own immense power to meet any infernal powers attempting a landing before unleashing the devastating might of its combined arms upon the invaders. The moving fortress is a marvel of industrial engineering, a titanic fleet carrier and battleship that can traverse both land and sea. This Leviathan patrols the shores of England, leaving a trail of black smoke and 3-foot-deep tracks in its wake. It serves as a mobile headquarters for the English High Command, an unrivaled artillery stronghold, and the only faithful vessel capable of engaging heretic behemoth-class ships in single naval combat and emerge victorious. It is equally capable of engaging enemy forces in the air, at sea, or on land. Within the vast fore of the superstructure stands the fortress monastery of the 10,000 Knights of St. George, who can match even the fiercest heretics in close quarters combat. An entire armoured corps accompanies Britannia, and a full fleet, comprising 1/3 of England's remaining naval strength, acts as its escort. Above it, the finest of England's air knights fly their fighter planes and naval bombers when the fortress goes to war, which is often. The heretic high captains, well aware of the strategic value of controlling the British Isles, relentlessly strive to establish a beachhead for eventual conquest. Thus far, all such incursions have been thwarted by the protection of the fortress. The technology that allows Britannia to move over shorelines is a closely guarded secret. Whatever its origin, this innovation allows the fortress to travel across the land of most English beaches, albeit slowly. When crawling upon England's shores, a great noise and deafening hiss of steam can be heard. Some say that the ship does not touch the ground at all. If the moving fortress has a weakness, it is that it remains the only one of its kind. England's reserves of orichalcum and other critical minerals required for its construction were exhausted by the monumental effort to build the pride of the nation. Current production and trade of such materials can barely sustain ongoing repairs to the fortress and the rest of the fleet. Within the British Isles, the moving fortress is a delicate issue to discuss. Dedicated to the defence of England alone, her neighbours grumble that while Englishmen sleep soundly under its protection, enemy navies continue to raid Alba, Eire, and the lands of Wales with impunity. The English Crown counters such accusations by claiming that it is the fear of the fortress that keeps hulking behemoth-class heretic battleships from approaching the shores of the three islands and mounting full-scale invasion on them all. Britannia proudly displays the heraldic device of the three lions. Under its construction, the English coat of arms carried only the 2 lions of William the Conqueror. When the Britannia was completed, a 3rd lion was added. No ruler before had dared to raise their own symbol alongside that of William I. At the prow stands the defiant image of a Lady Britannia, wielding a sword partially forged from the remains of Curtana, transformed from a relic of mercy into a blade of wrath. The sailors of the fleet swear that the figurehead has the power to turn aside any heretic artillery shell due to the divine providence granted to it by God. Indeed, the proud figurehead has never been touched by an enemy weapon, adding to the mystique and majesty of this, the foremost defender of England. Forced into a defensive war, England's industrial might has been redirected into the production of matchless shore batteries, an efficient air force, and above all, extra heavy mechanized infantry. These troops are the best trained and most numerous of their kind. The sheer mass of their armour allows them to form living impenetrable walls bristling with heavy weapons, deployable anywhere in the Crown dominions to counter the frequent heretic landings. Since the moving fortress cannot be everywhere at once, the Knights of St. Michael and St. George maintain several rapid deployment forces that deal with smaller heretic beachheads, while the Queen of the Fleet is reserved for the most severe threats. The war places continuous strain on England's treasury and politics. The ruling House of Normandy must balance the defence of the island nation with the demands of the Fateful Alliance. Trade with the mainland and the New World is vital, so the kings and queens of England maintain a strong fleet to protect the trade routes as best they can, even if they no longer dominate the ocean as they once did. The capital, London, is the beating heart of the nation. The Royal Learned Society, Academy of Arts, the Laboratory of Divine Biology, and the esteemed Fellowship of Engineers all work in close coordination here, alongside the experts of the Church Militant. Many of the great minds of England are as infamous for their eccentricities as their radical scientific ideas. One scandalous rumour claims that notorious immortal alchemist and mathematician John Dee, who once studied in the House of Wisdom of the Iron Sultanate, has kept the head of a former Queen of England alive in a jar for over 3 centuries, using methods combining the Metachrist program and the secrets of creating Taquin creatures. Thanks to such stories, considerable tension exists between the princes of the Church and the Crown of England. The island nation is often viewed as a breeding ground for dangerous religious ideas, and the sea that separates it from mainland Europa weakens the Church's control over its affairs. Alrighty, so today's video is on the Crown of England in the rulebook. A lot of this lore is just kind of a match to the lore that we got when they released the Moving Fortress of Britannia lore, but there's some interesting extra stuff in there. So this is from the World Gazetter section. The capital is London, nothing changes there. Government is monarchy. The head of state is His Majesty King Edmund III. Common languages are English, French, Latin, Sabir as a trade language, and also, and I'm really sorry about the pronunciation of this one, Cymraeg, which is Welsh. And I'm really sorry for the way that I pronounced that, Welsh folks. I'm very, very sorry. The population is approximately 28 million. And then the military, the Standing Army of England and its crown dependencies number over 100,000 strong, with an additional 75,000 troops stationed abroad. It is divided into the Army, the Royal Flying Corps, and the Royal Ordnance Corps. Though greatly depleted by the sustained heretical war of attrition, the Grand Fleet of England boasts some 150 ships, tasked primarily with protecting the seaborne trade. So there's some kind of fun stuff mentioned over the course of those final couple of paragraphs, basically. One of the most interesting ones was a mention of John Dee. For anyone who doesn't know, John Dee was a English mathematician and an astrologer and an astronomer, and he was into alchemy and the occult and all kinds of stuff. He was an advisor to Elizabeth I, and he lived, I want to say, he was born in 1520, although that might be wrong. I looked at the notes this morning and I haven't looked at them since. And he died into the early 1600s. I don't know why I can't remember those dates. I do apologize. So he was actually a big voice and proponent of the concept of the British Empire, quote unquote. And it's a term that he's actually credited with coining. He would leave Elizabeth's service, and I can't remember if that was acrimonious or not, but he wanted to learn more about the occult and the supernatural, and he went kind of searching Europe for the truth as he saw it about all this occult stuff, all this weird things, and he would end up dead. Basically, he died like penniless, and is apparently buried in an unknown grave. Now that's kind of fun when you take a character in Trench Crusade and they don't have, their historical figure, but they don't have a known resting place, and you decide to make them immortal. That tickles me. So, as per this lore here, John Dee is a notorious immortal alchemist and mathematician, and it seems to just straight up state, right, that he's immortal. So somebody's cracked immortality, and it might as well be him. The other possibility is that it's been a sequence of John Dees, right? Somebody who lives an incredibly kind of private life and keeps himself to himself, and might take on a single apprentice to teach his stuff to, who then takes on the role of John Dee upon the previous John Dee's death. So maybe you have like any number of John Dees that have occurred over time. That would also be quite kind of fitting, because in his search for answers, I guess, around the occult and all that kind of weird things, it is thought that he fell in with a bunch of charlatans, people who just kind of were pretending to do different things, like scryers and stuff like that. Scrying was a big kind of a charlatans activity back in the day, because if you were a convincing social engineer, you could basically take people for money and what they were worth and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a really interesting character to have in there, especially the idea that he would keep a queen's head alive in a jar for like 300 years, which is definitely something that's going to be frowned upon by the church. I don't know if the church would necessarily embrace the concept of any kind of immortality being granted outside of, other than like your undying immortal soul, which should be reunited with Christ in heaven. I don't know if they'd be down for anything else in that area. So there's also all this kind of stuff which I really like: the Royal Learned Society, the Academy of the Arts, the Laboratory of Divine Biology, and the Esteemed Fellowship of Engineers. Back in the day, and still to this day, there was a huge number of different societies and royal societies in England that were really trying to advance scientific learning and all this kind of stuff. You have to remember and appreciate the fact that as far as the British Empire was concerned, they really were better in their heads than everybody else. They really were like the light in the world. They were elevated above, the colonies and all this kind of stuff. So it's really nice to see them. Like, I'm not saying it was great that they had that kind of attitude, but they were at least pushing like scientific innovation and things like that. So it's nice to see that replicated here. Even with all the troubles that they're facing in the world of Trench Crusade, they're still trying to push these areas of understanding and things of that nature. We have another mention of the New World and how they are reliant is a strong term, but that they are very interested in maintaining their trade with the New World. That's described as vital. That's kind of interesting to me because we don't know much about the New World as it exists in Trench Crusade, but we know it's extremely important. We know it's important to the point where the Spanish and Portuguese were willing to let the British Isles fall to maintain their access to it, and the trade with it is described as vital. So there would seem to be an established, friendly civilization there that we are benefiting from them in ways that has to be more than simple trade. Like, it can't just be foods and things of that nature. I mean, at least it kind of strongly employs that we have the potato and the tomato and these like extremely important and awesome foods that were brought over and very much popularized all around Europe after their introduction due to this type of trade. But there has to be something else. If the Atlantic and those trade routes are being contested by heretics, you don't just go out of your way to bring over like things that you can grow here after you get them here, you know, the first time. It has to be a resource. It has to be potentially maybe some kind of ore or metal or something that is available there that will come into play later on, and that will likely make potentially the Iberian Peninsula a very interesting place in the overall lore of Trench Crusade. But I mean, who knows? One of the most interesting things to come out of the book, and this section in particular, is I will have the picture in the video. I have to go to the page. I'll scan it in so that it's in the video as part of the flashing art, but you will already have seen it. It's the new design of the heavy mechanized infantry. I don't know. There's nothing on this. It just says New Antioch Super Heavy Infantry, and it is tanky as hell. It is infinitely more tanky than the other one, the other mechanized heavy infantry, which is also shown. The old art is also shown, and this is called Super Heavy Infantry. So that's quite interesting. And this stuff is raw tanky. It's some Pat Labor looking shit. I absolutely adore it. I love the design. So that will be there in the video as well. And have a think about that one. Like, do we want yet another step up, or do we want yet another like super heavy armored thing on the table? I'm not sure. I know I love the design. I just don't know if it's replacing it, if it's a throwaway piece of art in the book. I have no idea. But I love it. And apparently the Crown of England makes a lot of that stuff. At least that's what the implication was, right? That they make a tremendous amount of it and create these fighting walls with it whenever they are invaded. So yeah, that's it for this video, I think. It is Sunday. I'm going to go chill. It's a beautiful sunny day here. I'm going to go plant some flowers for spring in my garden. I hope you're all having an absolutely wonderful weekend and a beautiful time and a nice run up to the Christmas season. And I will talk to you all real soon. Sooner than you think. Bye.